And we'll start with the questions. And the first one's going to be asked by Benta.
I think that works. Sorry, there's a bit of technical problems here. That's what you get when you're on Zoom. So we have to unmute each other all the time. So it might take a bit longer, but we'll try to be as quick as possible. But past that, well, first of all, Chris, thank you very much, as Dorothy said, for being here today. We're in second term right now, and we thought it would probably be a good place to start kind of at the beginning of this academic year. And when, to be honest, over summer, things were quite up in the air. I think no one realized how it would be still like right now. But yeah, I think that the main importance, what we felt would be a good question, is why were students invited back to Newcastle in September? Why did the university decide to make that start?
Yeah, thanks, Benta, and thanks for inviting me along to answer these questions. I mean, I think the answer to that one, is to try and remember what the situation was at the time, rather than obviously looking back on actually what happened. So there was very clear government guidance that came out in August and September that schools and universities should remain open. So in line with the rest of the sector, we put measures in place to support students coming to university. We brought students back to campus in good faith so that we could continue to support their learning. We extended return, we staggered it, we put stuff around physical distancing, enhanced our online induction. So we did everything we could to prepare. I suppose what was unpredictable was that while that thought about the best thing to do for students would be to get them back to campuses, all while that thought was going on, nobody predicted that actually we'd be seeing this peak of transmission starting to kick off in September and October. So the very time that the students came back was also the very time that the general population was seeing this rise in cases. And so obviously, if that could have been predicted, then the government guidance, which we have to follow, would have changed. But at the time, it was thought that there might be a small blip when the students came back and started living together, but that could be managed, and that remember that the infection rate in August was very low. You'll have seen subsequently, with the closing and the shutting and the various lockdowns and tiers that we went through, one of the problems managing this sort of student return, whether they're on campus, whether they're not, has been the speed and the change of government announcements. I mean, we've had instances where we've been preparing for something, on the Monday to reintroduce something or to stop something, and then on a Saturday night, literally, there'd be a government announcement on the TV or a letter to vice chancellors on a Sunday morning that said, actually, that's all off now, and we're doing this instead. So I suppose the dilemma to get across to the student body, and I know that you as sabbatical officers are well aware of this, is that we have to follow government guidance. There is some wriggle room for us to interpret that to some extent, but it often doesn't give us very long between that government guidance coming out and us having to institute changes to our students, communicate with our students along those lines. And that return in September was very much like that. Get everybody back. That's what we want you to do. I mean, imagine if Newcastle University had said, actually, we're so worried about the pandemic that we're not going to have any students back in September and October. What you would have felt like as a student at Newcastle, sitting at home in August with the pandemic reasonably well controlled, with all of your friends and going off to universities around the country, but Newcastle had taken the decision, it's just too dangerous, we're not having you back. Now, it may be that 2 or 3 months down the line, in retrospect, maybe would have said how clever Newcastle was to have done that and delayed that time. But we didn't have that benefit of hindsight. We all assumed that things were relatively settled down in August, and we had to follow the government guidance. And as it's turned out, it was probably not the most sensible bit of guidance that the government ever produced. But that's why the students were brought back in September. Essentially, we were all lulled into a bit of a false sense of security, and then had to follow government rules, or we'd have just been so out of line with the sector, and our 28,000 students quite rightly would have been screaming at us, how come we're not allowed back and everybody else in the sector is?
Thank you very much. So in a recent Wonky article that you co-wrote with our education officer, Sian Dickey, you largely agreed that the student experience isn't what anybody in the sector and you intended for it to be. So why haven't students been offered a tuition fee refund if you agree that the experience is not the same this year?
Yeah, so it's a very sensible question, Dorothy. And I think I would just start by, first of all, agreeing with the statement that we made in the Wonky article. Nobody could argue, I think, that the student experience has been what students expected, or what we intended. The opportunities for personal social activities, meeting friends, playing sport, joining societies, volunteering, which we all feel are part of normal university life, has been extremely limited and not what we have hoped for. What our efforts have been concentrated on, given that that broader experience hasn't been allowed really by the conditions we've had to follow, is this complete focus on doing all that we can to make sure that our students are supported in their learning and teaching to meet their learning outcomes and get the award that they came to university to get at the end of their studies. And I guess that sticking to the trying to meet the learning outcomes has been the government argument for why they haven't, announced to the sector, everybody gets a tuition fee refund. But of course, it's much more complicated than that. And you've quite rightly picked on the experience piece that's been missing, even if you might get your degree in geography. I'll come back to that in a moment. The other issue with tuition fee refunds, and I know that this was also in the Wonky article, and it's been in many other articles written in Wonky by student union presidents and others. It's not straightforward for either the universities or indeed the students in terms of the benefit. So from the university's point of view, how would it work? Well, most students obviously haven't paid the fees. It's gone, we've been paid by the student loan company, then the students pay it back. So one way to do this would be for us to hand back money to the student loan company, and then the student loan company could do something for the students. So let's look at that in detail. So the problem of us handing large sums of money back is that money has to come from somewhere. As I've described, our staff have been working, if anything, harder than they would in a normal year. We certainly haven't reduced our staff numbers. There's been additional costs associated with the switch to online, which I'll come on to in a moment, making the campus as COVID secure as we can, providing extra laptops, all that sort of stuff. So, there is no extra pot of money because of this crisis that enables us to give that money back. So if we had to give large sums of money back, then the only way for us to find that is to either reduce our staff numbers, and I'll put some real figures on this in a moment when I talk about the rent rebates, reduce our staff numbers, or stop investing in refurbing lecture theatres, infrastructure around teaching, all the things that we would normally do. So that would cause us, obviously a lot of pain. And the important thing is that it would reduce the student teaching and learning experience for subsequent years. And obviously many of the students here will be here next year and the year after. I'm sure they wouldn't want to be taught by less staff or in less up-to-date facilities. So there would be the real financial pain for the universities to have to suffer that would have consequences. And then the other side of that, of us giving money back to the student loan company, what immediate benefit would that be to the students, as was written again in the article? So let's say, for the sake of this argument, the student loan company decided to knock £5,000 off a student loan. That would mean for an average student, on average earnings, that they might pay their loan back when they were 40 instead of when they were 45. Well, that seems a benefit that would be a long way off. So I think that there needs to be a creative bit of thinking about how we can have something like a fee refund that would be of immediate benefit to the students now, that wouldn't bankrupt universities. And I think in the article, as we said, one potential route might be to, for example, increase the threshold so that there would be an immediate benefit for students who graduate. They wouldn't have to pay back any of their student loan until they earned more. That would be obviously a real benefit. There's been suggestions that students who've gone through this might be given some sort of degree course credit. So they might be given £4,000 or £5,000 to do another course, a master's course, or some other bite-sized courses in future that would enable them to backfill some of the lost learning. So I think it has to be really carefully thought through, that even if universities were to hand over a lot of money with the pain that would cause, how would you actually benefit now or in the near future? So our attention really has been focused more on what can we do now to help the students who've gone through this very difficult year. So I've described already over £500,000 we've spent on laptop schemes, keeping the libraries open, keeping the study spaces open and staffed so that people who don't have great access to study space or Wi-Fi or whatever at home can come into the university. We've invested much more money than we've ever done before in our health and wellbeing services. And I know one of your questions is related to that. Our very quick decision, I think certainly one of the first 2 or 3 in the sector, to completely refund any rent that was paid into our own or our licensed accommodation to students, fully refund when they couldn't be back. I mean, that's where I want to put the numbers on it, and tuition fee refunds would be much greater than this, but just giving the rental refunds, we estimate will cost us £11 million. Well, that's the salaries of roughly 220 lecturers that we've got to find from somewhere else because we've given the rent rebate. So this is a sort of zero-sum game. If we take money to give you rent rebates, which we think is of immediate benefit and the right thing to do, we have to find the salary for 200 lecturers from somewhere else. Now, in the short term, that's not that difficult because we simply do not spend £11 million over the next year on maintenance of the campus, on refurbing lecture theatres and doing all the things that we would normally do in a normal year. But you can obviously only do that to some extent before the buildings start to fall down, and you do end up having to get rid of staff. So I think the well-being, the IT support, keeping the place as open as possible, giving the rent rebates, things that would be of immediate benefit to the students is what we've emphasised. Having said all that, and what we said in the wonky article, I stand by. If you look at what they've done in Wales and what they've done in Scotland and what they've done in Northern Ireland, a fairly obvious solution to us, given how much support the government have put into other sectors and other devolved governments have put into the higher education sector in the devolved nations, would be for the government to do either a one-off payment to students this year for the inconvenience, the loss of experience. And I'm lobbying hard with student unions and in my board membership of UUK to do that. And in addition, perhaps this suggestion that some of you may have seen in Wonky in the last few days, suggested by a student union president, can't exactly remember which university it was, around this education credit, where students could come back and do for free, effectively, further courses. That they would seem to be obvious things to us that would be a real benefit, which wouldn't damage the university offering for subsequent years, but would put money in the pockets of students now. Just to finish that reply, you may have seen the sort of English version of the Scottish and Welsh and Northern Ireland initiative was this additional £50 million for sort of student hardship that was announced last week. If you do the sums in Newcastle, that's about £8 a student. So it's of no direct use whatsoever, really. So we're currently, if we just dished it out on a sort of per student basis, so we're currently working with sabbatical officers about what the fairest, who are the most deserving groups so we get a slice of that money based on our size. We don't get 50 million, obviously. I think it's 200 or so thousand. How we give out that 200,000 in the best and fairest way that will benefit those most deserving, including our international students, who, of course, for a variety of reasons, have also had a particularly hard time. I would say that the hardship funds that we have in our COVID emergency fund for students in financial difficulties to apply to, there are still funds available. We haven't had so much demand on that that we simply run out of money for that. So there's money in that pot, and this money here from the minister will obviously top that up. So what we are looking at is, first of all, whether we've communicated that well enough so that people are aware that that hardship fund is available. And then secondly, working with the sabbatical office to ask the question about the eligibility. Is the eligibility too tight? Is it too difficult to apply for that money? Do we need to broaden it? And one of the particular issues we've discovered, just referring back to international students, for example, is that to get access to hardship, you obviously have to show bank statement evidence that you're in financial difficulties. But to get your student visa, if you're an international student, you also have to have a certain amount of money in the bank. Now, that money in the bank may well be there on your bank statement, but it's not real money. It's simply being loaned to you by family or other friends to show that you've got that money in the bank, but you're expected to hand that back at the end of time. And of course, but if having that money in the bank stops you accessing the financial hardship funds, that's clearly an issue. So these sort of very detailed issues about why particular students can't access the hardship fund, which still has money in it, is something that we're just looking into now with the help of the sabbatical officers. So I think, to sum up, we're trying to give you the best learning and teaching experience we can in the situation. I don't think us handing money back to the student loan company and them doing something with your loan that might benefit you in 20 years' time is really going to help. It's either us or you. So what we're doing is focusing on what we can do now around well-being, around IT support, around student hardship, around rent rebates, while at the same time lobbying the government to give you some direct cash support that's meaningful, as they have done in other countries.
Thank you very much, Chris. Then the last question from us, you've spoken about experience quite a lot, and we all know that the experience definitely isn't as it normally is. And a big subject among students, and I know in conversation with the university as well, is mental health and the issues of mental health, which I think is affecting any of us, students, older people, residents, anywhere. It definitely hit us all hard. How is the university, how are you working towards diminishing barriers for students accessing mental health support?
Yeah, another really important point, and I spent some of yesterday afternoon actually with the with the Student Health and Wellbeing Service, just talking to them about their experiences, and I'll reflect on some of that as I go through my obviously pre-prepared response to that very important question. So just a bit of data to start up with, 4,500 students, we only have 28,000 students, so 4,500 students accessed our counselling services last year. 804 students, as a basis of that, were given their own personal mental health advisor for ongoing mental health or disability support. But we understand, talking to the head of the service, Sally Ingram, that approaching the service can be difficult. So a lot of the effort has been put into making it more accessible, increasing awareness, and enabling students to get the right level of support. And one of the things that came out yesterday quite clearly, and I guess it might have been obvious in retrospect, like a lot of this COVID stuff, is that what we found is that having a mixture of availability of in-person sessions for students who really want to meet a counsellor in a room, socially distanced, and talk about the issues, and having online availability has massively increased the uptake. So it seems, I guess quite predictably, but had not been thought through well before, that many students who might find it difficult to wander over to Kingsgate in the big building, go and see someone in an office they've never seen before, that might be a much bigger barrier than simply clicking on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams call virtually in your own room, knowing you can click the button and stop the meeting at any point, which is a lot easier than getting up and walking out of a room. So one of the things I learned yesterday was it looks like a much greater uptake of the service with this switch to online. And it was interesting chatting to the counsellors, many of whom were totally opposed to this, previously, a bit like the online teaching, where teachers felt they could never deliver lectures online in a reasonable way, and now they all do it. I think a lot of the counsellors believed they couldn't give the true required counselling sessions not in a room with someone present in person, and now many of those counsellors, all of them pretty much agree that for certain students, certain circumstances, with certain issues, actually it's better than the present in person. So that's something, like a lot of things we've learned during COVID, that we will continue afterwards. So I wanted just to give you some examples of things we've done to try and address the question you raised, Bente. So extended hours of service, 9 p.m. Monday to Thursday, video, telephone, live chat support, the latter for students who may not be able to talk openly, so they want the sort of chat box version. Opened a clinic in the student union offices, launched a 24/7 service talk campus, very popular with international students outside UK time zones, who of course it might not be ideal for them having the 9 to 5 hours. Introduced listening ear, an informal pastoral care service where students can receive a one-off or weekly call to chat about them, the check-in. They don't call in, they just get called once a week to check that things are all right with them. Very much working with the NUSU welfare officer. Last year, we introduced this single point of contact for transitioning and non-binary students. And this year we've been extended that to refugee and asylum seekers. And on top of all that, 2 really important appointments for us in the last 6 months. So we now have a dedicated hate crime and sexual violence prevention officer to look specifically at the support we give to students affected by hate crime and sexual violence, including sex work, is something that's very dear to my heart, having gone through some very difficult cases of sexual harassment over my time as Vice-Chancellor. And then we've also appointed a senior policy and resolution manager to continue this continuous review of our student-facing policies to make sure that they continue to be student-focused and student-informed. So we always try and meet students' requests for counsellors with specific characteristics. If they, if they particularly think, well, I'd like some counselling, but I only want to see a woman. I only want to see somebody with this background. I only want to see someone with this racial background. Where we can address that, we'll also, try and fit in with that. Although it may, of course, mean sometimes you have to wait longer. And as a means to that, one of the things that we are still looking to improve is the diversity in the team and make sure that where there are those requests that we have them. There are, of course, times when student support needs more specialist support than what we have available in our own services. And so we work very closely with our partners. You may be aware of the award-winning in-house psychology clinic. So some of our doctoral psychology students who are very shortly to be trained clinical psychologists have been offering cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, to some of our students where the mental health team believe that's required. We have a very close link with the NHS for those referrals and have an NHS nurse that we fund who works with our team who can make that link very quickly where we think we need quite rapid referral to full-on NHS, psychiatric or psychology services. And we fund our own private therapy support from Rape Crisis and the city's local eating distress service, NIWE. We also acknowledge that sometimes students benefit from being able to take self-care steps towards supporting their mental health before accessing more formal interventions. And so we've broadened our range of online support so students can have access to that. And you can find this on the Student Union and our own websites. Includes an app encouraging positive mental well-being strategies, and then Silver Cloud, which is an online CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy platform. So hopefully with that sort of suite of things that we're trying to do, we are trying to make it more accessible. If there are things that we're still not doing that you feel we could do, then if you email Sally Ingram, who's head of the Health and Wellbeing Service, sally.ingram at NCL, with any suggestions, we're always looking to improve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're running a little bit over, but I hope you don't mind staying.
No, of course not. Of course not.
So we've had a lot of questions come in from students. I don't think we'll get to as many as we'd like to today, but we will send, Kay is going to save the chat, and then we will send those questions across and then do kind of a NUSU page of the answers if you are okay to maybe just answer some of those via email.
Of course,
But we received a question, and so the first question that we are going to ask you is, what are the arguments against blanket candidature and deadline extensions for PGRs in a similar way to undergraduate deadlines and staff funding extensions? We've also received, just in general, I think we'll cover PGRs just as kind of like a topic, and just in general that, we've made certain provisions for both undergraduate and postgraduate taught students, and you've acknowledged that, things are really difficult and that we should be making necessary adjustments. So why can't we make those for PGR students?
Okay, it's a really good question. It's become a very live issue both in the sector and in the university. I think there's a feeling, obviously, that PGR students somehow sit in this sort of hinterland between our classical taught students and staff, and they're treated in staff in some aspects and not in others. I mean, we were very lucky to have a development trust. That's an organisation that collects money that people have left to us in wills classically over the years. That in an unprecedented fashion, gave us over £2 million to spend on PhD students and their extensions and their support. And that's on top of the UKRI support that I know many students, I think, quite rightly think is inadequate. And again, a bit like the student hardship funds, listen, I'm just talking about the financial bit of that question. What we found there is, we've got this big pot of money from the development trust to do exactly what they describe, extend people, give them support, and yet we've not found the uptake to be particularly high. So there's plenty of money left in that fund. So I think when this was raised last week by by Charlotte, the postgraduate officer. We're going back again. Has it been publicised enough? Are there other criteria for eligibility broad enough? Are there people who should be getting that support who somehow, because we've got the rules wrong or the publicity wrong, aren't doing it? So I think in terms of the financial support, we're in a better place than many other universities in that we do have this support that's way above the support that UKRI have given for their students. And remembering that, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's something like only a quarter of our students, it might even be less, are UKRI funded. So I think the vast majority of our students aren't eligible for that anyway. In terms of deadlines, extensions, I think that is something that we can look at. I don't see any reason. I mean, I can't give you chapter and verse, Dorothy, on that, but I think if there are practical things, and obviously those students, what you're suggesting, I think, is they've obviously looked at the safety net policies that we put in place for taught students, which I think is being broadly accepted as a good thing. I think if there are things in that there seems to be no obvious reason why some of those couldn't be applied to PGR students, then I would urge them probably to go through Charlotte and contact us that way with suggestions, and we can work with the PVC education to see if some of those can be implemented. So very willing to look at all of those suggestions.
Thank you, Chris. We'll do a few more questions, but just as Dorothy said, for all the students here, we'll make sure that you get your answers eventually. We're just trying to get it all in here in time. Chris, I'll just read out loud what the student is asking. With growing concerns that students aren't being heard and are feeling too scared to speak up, how do you aim, and how does the university aim to rebuild trust with students?
Yeah, I guess events like this, Bentley, I think. I mean, I suppose, obviously each of the departments, each of the schools, each of the units has, has student reps. I mean, I think, they obviously, the way it's supposed to work is that, there's two levels, isn't there? There's the sort of unit level reps who are supposed to gather comments, complaints, issues from the students and feed them up through the schools. They sit on the school education committees. And then, they would be fed up to the faculties and up to the university. So that's one route. And then obviously there's the reason that we have sabbatical officers, is that they have, and we have more of them than we've ever had in terms of subspecialties. And I think we're already in our second year of a dedicated postgraduate officer. So, feeding stuff through that. In terms of, general students being able to contact me directly, I can certainly inform, people who are on the call that many of your colleagues have no problems with emailing me directly. I get student emails every day. I don't respond to them all, but I send them to people that do respond to them because they have the expertise that the question is related around. I'm not encouraging you to send me further emails, but certainly if you feel that you've tried everything else, you've gone through your student rep, you've written to Dorothy, you've written to Bent there, and nothing is happening, then writing to me is certainly one route. But having these sort of events, having our staff, our pro-vice chancellors come to meetings like this just to hear what you have to say. I'm also going to attend a meeting with some of my colleagues with all of the student reps in the next week or so to hear their views. So if you have suggestions of how you think we could improve the contact out with the student reps and the SAB officers, again, very willing to have suggestions. We didn't have student reps 5 years ago. They were something that we brought in. So, if you have got ideas, very pleased to hear them.
We'll hopefully have lots of ideas for you, because our open debate at the end of council is about how beneficial things like this are. So hopefully we'll be able to give you lots and lots of constructive feedback.
As I said, Dorothy, because I overran with the answers to the pre-submitted questions, I'm perfectly happy to stay on for a few more minutes. I don't have to go anywhere at 5:30.
Okay, so I've got a question I'm going to mix two questions that come in. I think they kind of cover the same broad topics. So a student asked particularly about third year students who've been both affected by strikes and the pandemic and have had roughly half their degrees online or lost completely. How will the university repay for wasted time and the lack of learning due to both these circumstances? And then I'm going to also add on to the end of that with the lack of study spaces, such as like the closure of the Philip Robinson Library, as well as other study spaces not being open on campus. How are you going to repay students for this lack of learning and lack of access to facilities?
Yeah, so I think the first part of the question I hopefully answered in my, in the third question that I answered before. I mean, I think, we do assuming that the students get their degrees at the end of this, and therefore they've met their learning outcomes. I think it's all about the loss of experience, isn't it, Dorothy? And I think some of the creative ways that are being discussed. I think the learning credit, I think, is one I'm particularly positive about, that the students could be given, huge discounts for doing further degrees, masters, etc. I think that would be one way for those students who we can't sort of give stuff back, in second and third year, because there is no second and third year. As I said, I still think there is a reasonable chance that the government might, particularly for all of our students affected, produce a handout effectively because of what they've done in other countries. And when we complained about the 50 million not being enough, it's not that far off what the whole of Wales were given, for example. It was pointed out to us by the government that that was till the end of the financial year, the end of March, suggesting that there may well be another large tranche coming in, in April. So I think there is a possibility that the government recognising, the loss of learning, particularly for final years who can't get it back, might do something financially for them. I've explained the problems of us directly having got students to meet their learning outcomes, then doing major refunds in that, as I say, student accommodation alone refunds has cost us 11 million, and that's 200 salaries. So there just isn't the funds there, even if we had the will. The second, just remind me the second part of the question.
It was about the lack of facilities open.
Yes. No, I remember it now. So that's the first I've heard of that, Dorothy, in terms of there being an issue. I mean, we've obviously opened up lots of study spaces for the students I described that couldn't couldn't work at home, etc. And I mean, Colin Campbell's not on the call, who obviously oversees that, but we've certainly had no discussions at the senior level of we've run out of spaces and we need to put on more. And so therefore it's just not got onto my radar. But if there is a genuine shortage of study spaces and we've got perfectly good student study spaces closed, then that's something we can directly take back tonight, and we will be able to look at that immediately if it's an issue. But it's the first I've heard of it, Dorothy, that one, that there's a lack of student study spaces with potential spaces closed. I've just not come across that before.
Thank you, Chris. Just on that, it seems to be a bit of a secret, but we do have study spaces upstairs in the Student Union as well that isn't always as occupied. So if anyone wants to study there, there's space there as well. Seems to be like that. Not a lot of people know that. The next question, and I'm assuming this is what came from your first answer about why students were invited back to Newcastle in September. And someone is asking, why did Newcastle University start teaching 3 weeks later than other universities? Because I think you mentioned in your first answer that we kind of wanted to be in line with other universities, but why did we decide to do it 3 weeks late? And I think more important, would we do that again? Yes or no? I mean, would the university do that again?
Yeah, I mean the whole point of the university year, that it's a really important one, and obviously some of you have been on Senates and others where we've been discussing this. So the theory last year was to stagger the comeback, so you wouldn't get everybody back at once. You would give people longer for that online induction that wasn't obviously the same as the face-to-face induction. And I mean, just to point out, Newcastle University has pretty much always started a week later than anyone else. Just a week later, which is why we've had, why you had to have the end of semester 1 taught after Christmas, and with the knock-on effect of no inter-semester gap, etc. And one of the things that we've been looking at in because of this, having to relook at the year, is to relook at that again. And so as we move into subsequent years, we are hoping to bring, well, we are planning to bring the start of the student year much more in line with other universities, finish all the teaching before Christmas, have an inter-semester break, and still get the same amount of teaching. So you're right, Newcastle was out of kilter with the sector generally, which we've used the COVID crisis as an excuse to fix. Last year, there was that specific long induction for the staggering health reasons and the fact that online might take longer than face-to-face. But obviously, having looked at the feedback and how that worked, we don't plan on that extended induction this year. We'll go bang into the normal week of induction and then start of teaching, and that will be at the same time as Leeds and Manchester and Birmingham and everywhere else, not Oxbridge obviously, but the normal red brick universities that we normally compete with, where we've typically been a week later.
Okay, then we'll follow up on that, and that will be the last question, unfortunately, for this evening. But again, as we said, we will make sure you get your answers eventually. And then Dorothy will end it after this question. I just need to look up. Yeah, here we are. Students spent several years building up to graduation day. Can you assure students will have missed out on a proper in-person graduation, including myself, Chris, that they will be offered one at a later date when it's safe to do so?
I mean, yeah, so that's a very easy, it's an easy one to say, a less harder one to do, but that is currently our intention. I mean, we haven't yet cancelled this year's, as you know. We're hoping to wait and see, you know, how the pandemic, how the vaccination goes, and it's still possible we might be able to, you know, run a summer graduation, perhaps with some modifications. So we haven't made that decision yet. But if we were to decide, because of advice and the pandemic, to put this year's off, that would be effectively 2 years plus the postgraduate ceremonies in the autumn of students who've not had that proper experience. And so, you know, right at the top of our agenda is how we do that. Of course, it will be a huge backlog, and we're not sure what time of the year, once we get back to something like normal, we'll be able to do it. But we certainly are currently planning to offer something like a normal graduation experience for anyone who wants it, who's missed out on it.
So thank you so much. That's really all the questions we have time for, because obviously we've got to do an entire council after this and we don't want to keep everybody too late. However, we will be saving the chat and sending the questions to Chris for an answer. So
thank you. Thanks, Dorothy. I mean, just to say again, I'm comfortable to do this again whenever you think it would be appropriate. Okay.
Brilliant.
So
thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. So to everybody else, there's going to be a 5-minute break between now and the start of council, but please do stay on the call so we can count everyone to make sure that we have reached quorum and can do things well. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming a little bit earlier to take part in the Q&A session.
Well, whilst we're waiting for the staff to enter the president into the meeting, I'd just like to go over the introduction. So, hello everyone. Council planning says the screen is frozen. That makes sense now. Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the 4th Student Council of the year. Welcome to the 4th Student Council of the year. Obviously, as we're all aware, here at council, a lot of people will attend this council. This council usually has a normal, unusually higher attendance, because obviously we will have lots of candidates here who are running for positions in the SU. So to all candidates, I say hello. I'm glad that you're here and that you're running for roles in the union. I can certainly say it's been lots of fun running for the past 2 years. So I hope that you will use this opportunity in council to learn what council does, how it works, and how you can be a part of it. So that obviously means that I am going to try and explain a few things before we start each section, just so that new members who've just turned up can get a feel for how council works. Now, again, unfortunately, due to the fact that I'm not actually in the union building, I do not have a gavel, so we will just have to assume that when I say something is passed, it is passed without the strike of a gavel. I apologise for that. Now, first up is the minutes of the previous meeting. So again, for those who don't know, this is just to pass the minutes of the previous council meeting, which was last month. So if anyone has any corrections or points raised about the minutes of the previous council, can you please make them known now? Otherwise, they will be deemed passed. I'll give you 10 seconds. Okay, there's none submitted, so that is deemed passed. We're now coming on to the steering committee report. Again, you should have all received this. If anyone has any corrections or points regarding the steering committee report, please make them known now, otherwise they'll be deemed passed. You have 10 seconds. Okay, that is deemed passed as well. Thirdly, we have the Scrutiny Committee and Disciplinary Committee report. So again, you should have all received this. If you have any corrections or points you would like to raise, you have 10 seconds, otherwise it'll be deemed passed. Okay, that is deemed passed. We now have the State of the Union report from the President of the Union. I will allow 10 minutes. I will allow 10 minutes for the State of the Union report from President Chairway. Dorothy, feel free to unmute yourself and I'll begin timing as soon as you start speaking.
Sorry, just having some technical difficulties after relocating. Right, State of the Union, let's go. It's only been 3 short weeks since we met, and I bet you thought I wouldn't have a lot to update you on, but you'd be wrong. I'm going to start by now saying there's a factual error in my State of the Union in the second line. I'm a history student and not a maths student, so there we go. Most of the work we've been doing has been on how to spend our share of the 50 million, not 500 million, 50 million promised to universities by the government. And I know what you're all thinking, spending spree, right? But no, because we only got a whopping £182,078. And if you're curious, divided across the 22,000 students who are eligible, it works out at around £8 per person. That's enough for 2 meal deals in the co-op and some hand sanitizer. I checked. With this money, we worked to create a COVID-19 living cost support fund that helps students who are eligible from the rules that the government has put out, and an email should have gone out today on Thursday. However, Pastor Me can't confirm this 100%, so if it hasn't, consider this insider knowledge. Additionally, our other work has been around how we continue to support international students. Bent has been working with the International Office on listening campaigns to better understand what challenges international students have been facing and which support could be better. In addition to this work, we've been involved in lots of conversations at the university surrounding how we support international students in the world of ever-changing guidelines from the government, as well as challenges that the government haven't given adequate considerations, such as the April deadline for the graduate route. In terms of postgraduate, Charlotte spent a considerable time and energy working on furthering the council motion that was passed on support for Pgrs. She's been organising meetings with key people to lobby for the points raised in the motion, and I cross my fingers, hope that I'll be able to give you a fuller update soon. There is still, surprisingly, no sports. However, Bent has been running lots of catch-up sessions with clubs just to understand what they're dealing with and for future planning, which is key to the reintroduction of sports. There's been a lot going on around welfare. Nadia has been finishing her harm reduction report that should be heading to the university's substance misuse working group for discussion and recommendation, including that the university adopt a harm reduction stance. There's, sorry, I've lost my State of the Union with the new screen share. There we go. There's also been lots of work with the health and support worker that we're hiring. This includes lots of work on the job description, as well as meetings with people from across the university to ensure that this new post works well in the support ecosystem. We can't wait for this post to be advertised and for us to have more welfare support in the SU. In terms of student media, they've been organising NUSU election debates to be streamed online by NUTV and for Liberation Officer debates to be on NSR. The Courier released their quarantine crush column for Valentine's Day, and even if no one did declare their undying love for me, it was fun to read nonetheless. They have also got a new Agony Aunt section, which is due to be released this week in collaboration with the NUSU Inclusive Buddies. As well as this, there's been lots of Courier articles that go along with Feel Yourself February that are really interesting reads on body positivity and acceptance and what this means in the context of the pandemic. I guess this is a good segue onto campaigns. Feel Yourself February has been going on, and it's been a wonderfully wholesome campaign so far. There's still lots of events happening if you want to check those out. Wow, there's a really bad typo there. In addition to this, Pride Inside has been going on during Feb. Celebrating LGBT History Month, there's still a charity pub quiz, as well as a virtual student pride event. So I really recommend getting involved with these. Shaping Futures will also be launching in March as our climate campaign for the year, with lots of fun events such as Hedgehog First Aid. And because this is the last council before a lot of deadlines, I thought I'd let you know that nominations for the Ts close March 2nd, so get nominating. NUSU election week is also slowly creeping up on us. So this is your reminder that manifestos are up on the website and that voting opens March 1st. And by the next time we meet, there will be officers elect. Dun, dun, dun!
All right, thank you very much, Madam President. If we have any corrections or any questions or points to be raised at this point regarding the President's State of the Union, please raise them now. Otherwise, the State of the Union will be deemed passed. You have 10 seconds. Okay, the State of the Union is deemed passed. We now have questions and mandates for sabbatical officers. So again, for those who don't know, because there might be some new people in this call, question mandates is a section of Student Council which happens every month, where the sabbatical officers are able to be questioned by you, the people. So if anyone has any questions for the sabbatical officers, please raise your hand. Please raise your hand now. Using the feature on Zoom, and then if you do raise your hand, I will call you to unmute, and then once you've unmuted, you can ask your question. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand in the chat. And I'm just trying to check because I can't see everyone, unfortunately. So I'm just going to try and see if I can resize this. But so far, I can't see anyone. So I'm assuming that there are no questions. Unless any other member of council can tell me otherwise now, because I can't see anything. So I'm assuming no questions. Okie dokie. 10 more seconds for that then. Okie dokie. So no more questions. Now we have the officer reports and committee minutes. So again, if anyone has any corrections or points they'd like to raise, please let them be known now, again, by raising your hand. If we don't have any within the 10 seconds, then the officer reports and executive committee minutes will be deemed passed. So. Okay, those are deemed passed. We now move on to our motions. Now, I'm just going to give a brief explanation of how the motions work. So this month we have no business motions, 2 constitutional motions, and 3 ordinary motions. Now, a business motion is an administrative motion. A constitutional motion is one which requires 2/3 assent to change the constitution of the union. An ordinary motion only requires 50% assent. So we have no business motions this month, so we'll move straight on to the constitutional motions. The first one being to mandate the ethics and environment rep to monitor the progress of green pledges. Now, I will just say before we begin that due to a technical difficulty, the Ombia code has been changed. Obviously, I can't say that out loud because this is being live streamed. However, if you do have a voting place, that Ombia code should have been sent to you either in the chat or by email. I think it's in the chat. To those who have a voting place, if you do have a voting place and you don't have the code, please message the IT who is on the IT or George who are on this call, and you can message them in the chat. So I will now hand over to Chloe Thompson, who can now unmute herself, and she can begin to talk about her motion, and you have 2 minutes from when you begin speaking.
Thanks, Chris. So last year, the Green Pledges were proposed and created by the sabbatical officer team. And it's for like individual schools within the university to just take on environmentally friendly, sustainable pledges like green pledges. These just revolve around, reducing power usage, plastic, and overall waste. So as ethic and environmental rep, it would just be to add to the job description to monitor the progress, make sure that they're being followed, encourage schools to take them on if they haven't already. So I'm already doing that now, but it'd be for like future reps to also do the same.
Is that everything, Chloe?
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okie dokie. Now we are opening up to questions. So if you have a question for Chloe about the motion, please feel free to raise your hand now and ask away. Otherwise, we will move straight on to the debate. So are there any questions? If so, please raise your hand. I'll give 10 more seconds. Okie dokie, so we'll now move on to the debate. As there were no questions, I don't think this should be too heated. So I'll do 1 for and 1 against. So would anyone like to speak for this motion? If so, please raise your hand. Oh, we've had 1 hand raised from the education officer. Feel free to, and as no one else has raised a hand and you were the first, feel free to unmute, and you have 2 minutes to speak on the motion.
Yeah, I'm not going to take up 2 minutes or anything. It's just to kind of show support, because obviously I've seconded this motion, and just to say that this is really going to help with continuing the legacy work in terms of the climate stuff that we've done in the union. Just because sometimes when sabbatical officers come and go, different PTOs come and go, things can tend to get lost. So it's just really important that we have this within the job description, just so that any future ethics and environment reps are able to keep up with all the environment stuff that's happening within the union and also the university.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now there'll be 1 argument against. Does anyone wish to speak against this motion? If so, please raise your hand. 10 seconds. Okay, there was no one offering for that, so we'll just move straight on to a vote. Now, as I said before, the Ombia code has been changed. So if you're a voting member, you should have received the updated code. If you didn't receive the updated code, please message George now. We'll just allow 30 seconds for that. And once those 30 seconds have passed, we will open up the vote. So as I said, it's just an opportunity to quickly say, if you don't have your code, please message George or the IT now on the Zoom call. Okay, 10 more seconds. Okay, George and the IT have said that no one has messaged them, so that's absolutely wonderful. We'll now open up the vote, please. Okay, we've had quite a long time there. So if you would like to now close the poll, and that's an immediate pass. So very well done there. We'll now move on to the next topic. So this is motion 302 to rename Newcastle Student Radio to Metro Kieran Radio. And this has been proposed by Metro Kieran. So Metro Kieran, if you would like to unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes to explain your motion.
Well, hello everybody. It's fantastic to see so many great people at council. I can only imagine that you're all here to see me and nobody else. I mean, at the end of the day, Metro Kieran has been forced to come here. He'd rather be doing other more productive things, but he has been twisted his arm into coming. So I'm sorry for doing this, but I've been forced into it by other forces at council. Also, it is sad, it's very sad, it's very, very sad reports to hear reports of Metro lovers being rejected and turned away from council. I've had many, many fans being turned away from joining the Zoom call, and that's not fair. Anyway, constitutional motion. I would like to preface this by saying for every vote that is rejected that I have brought to council today, I will bring 5 more for every student council going forward. I think that Metro Kieran Radio would be a far better name for this radio station, as it would greatly improve student listening, which is currently way down, and that can only be a good thing. How long have I got left, Chris?
41 seconds, Metro Kieran.
1 second, that's so huge. I'll make the most of those, do not worry. And at the end of the day, the playlist at Newcastle Students' Union is not good enough. I have not seen any reports of train-related bangers. 0. Things such as the Thomas the Tank Engine soundtrack, never been played. No wonder people are not listening. And with changing the name to Newcastle, from Newcastle Student Radio to Metro Kieran, we will greatly improve this. Thank you. Oh, and also
that was your 2 minutes, I'm afraid, but that actually was dead on 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Metro Kieran. We now have an opportunity for anyone to ask questions to Metro Kieran. So if anyone would like to ask Metro Kieran any questions, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, we'll move on to the debate. Oh, we've had one raised hand from Jack Train. Jack, if you would like to unmute yourself, and you may speak.
Yeah, Metro Kieran, can I just ask, have you had any involvement with NSR before actually asking for this name change?
No, but I have had a mandate from the people. I was elected under the manifesto of renaming Newcastle Student Radio, and that is the mandate I'm going with, pushed by Scrutiny Council as they force me to try and implement my manifesto. But with a name like mine, I will become more involved, obviously. And also, congratulations on the fantastic surname.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions for Metro Kieran? If so, please raise your hand. Ten more seconds to ask a question. Okay, that's question time's up. So we're now going to move on to the debate. I will allow one for, one against. So who would like to speak for this motion? If no one does want to, then Metro Kieran, you are able to speak for your own motion if you would like. But obviously anyone can speak for the motion if they want to raise a hand. Okay, we've had no raised hands to speak for the motion. So could we have someone to speak against the motion? I will allow Okay, we've had one raised hand from Emma Linton. Oh, we've had two raised hands. Well, we've had one raised hand from Emma Linton, and you were first, so I'll give it to you. You may unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak against the motion.
Cool, thanks, Chris. It's a very interesting proposal you put forward, Kieran, but as the current station manager of NSR, I kind of obviously feel obliged to respond. First off, I'm quite interested to hear your opinions on the poor listening figures, given that only actually the committee of NSR have access to those. I am interested to hear how you have such strong opinions on that. But I would just like to remind everyone here that obviously the purpose of NSR is run by students and for students, and to give people an experience in student radio. I'm not quite sure how much I feel Metro Kieran Radio is quite focused on the students more than it is focused on yourself, especially given that you have just admitted to having never been involved in NSR or have never actually approached us with any serious opinions or ideas. But nonetheless, like I say, an interesting proposal. Secondly, I'd just like to say, in response to your claims that a few students actually are involved in NSR. We've actually had record members this year and last year, and given a pandemic, I actually think that's quite impressive. And as a brand, NSR, we're very well established. We've actually got connections with other stations up and down the country. We've been recognised by the National Student Radio Association, Radio 1 and Global under Domini's leadership, and have gone on to win several awards. In response to your claims that we don't play enough train-related bangers, you are more than welcome to get the Thomas the Tank Engine theme on NSR. I think actually what you're looking for instead of a rebrand might actually be a show on NSR. So if you would like to have an hour slot each week in which you can come and play your train-related bangers, please get in touch, and we've been more than happy to put that in place for you.
Okay. Unfortunately, if that was phrased as a question, I would be able to allow Metro Kieran to respond. But unfortunately, that was phrased as a debate topic, so I'm unfortunately unable to allow Metro Kieran to respond. Although I'm sure if he wants to get in touch via radio, via email, he's more than welcome to. Considering that we've had more hands raised, I will again offer a second vote for and against. So if anyone would like to speak for the motion, please raise your hand now. Okay, and if anyone would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand now. Oh, and both those hands that were raised went down. That's absolutely fine. That means we don't have to do another debate. So let's move on to the vote. So if we would like to now open the vote, please. Okie dokie. Okay, let's close the poll there. And can we have the results, please? So unfortunately, that motion did not pass. If we'd now like to move on to the normal motions. So this motion is titled, let's get to the title. I apologize for this. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Where's it gone? Ah, yes. So this is motion 401, and this is the annual commitment to food and clothes donations at NUSU, and this is being proposed by Chloe Thompson. So Chloe, you have 2 minutes to speak, and that will start once you start speaking.
Thanks, Chris. So this proposal is for the Students' Union to partner with various charities within the Northeast and give them just like a space to, like, you know, for like collection points and projects, stuff like that. There's like, this has happened in the past where like the Student Union has partnered with other charities, but that's usually triggered by like the student body. And I just think it'd be good if the union made its own effort to do it like annually and branch out and, you know, give awareness to the wide variety of charities that kind of like rely on donations to function, especially since, you know, we're in a pandemic now and a lot of people are relying on charity a lot more than they have done in the past. Just think it'd be a good thing for it to do.
Okay, excellent. If anyone would like to ask any questions, now is your time. Please feel free to raise your hand on the Zoom, obviously. Any questions? 10 more seconds. Okie dokie. We'll now move on to a debate with one speaker for and one speaker against. If anyone would like to speak for the motion, please raise your hand now. Oh, we've had the hand raised there from the Education Officer. Please feel free to speak for the debate. You have 2 minutes from as soon as you begin speaking.
Yeah, so this is just something that NUSU does regularly anyway, be it through societies like Chloe said, or through campaigns. It's something that I'm intending to do as part of Shaping Futures this later on in second semester. So I think this is just something that we can be doing to also just like help the community, but also largely students leave behind a lot of waste, and it would be really useful if we're putting that to a good place. So making sure that students are like donating any food that's left over at the end of the term when they leave their accommodation, or any clothing or anything like that. And I think it'd just be really useful for us to facilitate that as a union.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Would anyone like to speak against this motion? If so, please raise your hand. 10 seconds. Okay, no one has raised their hand, so we will move on to a vote. You could start the poll, please. Voting is now open. Okay, if we'd like to now close the poll. And that's passed. Okay, we're now moving on to our second normal motion. And that is motion 402 to rename a room after prolific alumni. And this is being submitted by or proposed by Metro Kieran. Metro Kieran, you have 2 minutes starting from when you begin speaking.
Hello everybody, I'm back again. Well, I think it's very important that we honour our best alumni, and some of our best alumni has to be the Right Honourable Gentleman, Tim Farron. MLK, at the end of the day, has too many rooms. He's got statues, he's got days. Tim Farron doesn't have a day. Does he deserve a day? Probably not, to be honest, no. But he deserves a room at the very least. Tim Farron himself has came out on Twitter and said he would vote on this matter. And if that in the day, Student Council has never before gotten that level of engagement from MPs. And it's made me think that maybe Metro even should run for an MP position himself. Anyway, that's another council further down the line. But back to the point at hand. Renaming this room would bring major benefits to the Students' Union. And I'll be quite happy to make a sign myself if that reduces the costs. And I don't want Financial Committee to be the bearer of bad news. And I'll do a great job. I'll do a great job, Chris. I promise. But yeah, Tim Farron is one of the nicest guys in politics. He's always had a good thing to say about people. Never annoyed any of the wrong groups. Never had any problems with any of them. Honestly, I promise. Nope, none at all. But yeah, 32% was pretty good last time. We only need a little bit more and we can make history. And if you don't like Tim Farron, it would be funny if we made him come all this way up just to open a room he didn't really want. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Metro Kieran. If anyone would now like to ask Metro Kieran questions, please feel free to raise your hand now so that you may ask questions. Give no one so far. So, oh, we've had one raised hand from Alex Walker. Alex, ask away.
Metro Kieran, Tim Farron is a controversial figure, but I think we should, not put a blanket ban because of that. Do you not think it might be a good idea to bring a motion to council saying to name a room after Tim Farron rather than rename the Martin Luther King room? I mean, surely there's room for both of them.
Okay, Metro Kieran, if you'd like to respond.
Well, I think space is actually very tight at the Students' Union. I can't think of many rooms that haven't been named. Maybe the planning room, but I like the planning room. So where else would you plan? Think about it. Makes sense, doesn't it? And I would like to just point out, for every question that's posed at me from now on, I will be waterfalling.
Okay, we have another question raised hand from Joe Molinder. Joe, if you would like to ask your question.
Thank you, Chris. Hello, Mr. Kieran. You mentioned that Tim Farron tweeted about the motion, but do you not think it's a bad sign that he tweeted against renaming the MLK room after Tim Farron?
Metro Kieran, your chance to respond.
Well, as Alex said, he is a very controversial figure, and a lot of people don't like him. And if we don't like him, we should annoy him, and this would annoy him. So let's do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions for Metro Kieran? If so, please raise your hand. I'll give 10 seconds to raise a hand. Okay, we'll now open up the debate. I will take one for and one against. If anyone would like to speak for the motion, please raise their hands now. I will give 10 seconds. Okay, if anyone would like to speak against the motion, we've already had a hand raised. I will finish where I started. If anyone would like to speak against the motion, please raise your hand now. Okay, we've had one hand raised from Jack Train. Jack, if you would like to ask your question. Sorry, not ask a question. What am I talking about? I apologise. Jack, if you would like to make your statement against this motion, I do apologise.
Thank you, Chris. So, Metro Kieran, obviously, unfortunately, my against question would relate very much to Joe Lander's question about Tim Farron actually rejecting the support for this motion. In addition, renaming a room because it is funny is not only making a mockery of student politics in general, it actually defines what maining a movement is about. Martin Luther King is an absolutely specific figure within the Black rights movement, and he was named after the Newcastle University decision to get an honorary degree. When we compare this to Tim Farron, yes, he's a prominent alumni. However, this should not take away from the Martin Luther King movement, which seems to be what the message from this motion is all about. In addition, this idea of making him come up here because it is funny just does not sit right within student politics. If Tim Farron wants to make a visit because he's a prominent alumni, then I'll of course be in support of this. However, because if we're actually supporting this motion by saying it is funny, how on earth are we what are we saying about student politics in general if we're making it come up because it is funny? It does not make logical sense, and that's why I'm against this motion.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to a vote. If you could open the poll, please. Polling is now open. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, can we please close the poll? And that motion has been rejected. Okay. could we please move on to the next motion? Okay, motion 403. I believe this is the final motion of the evening. And this is motion 403, the NUSU official song. And this has been proposed by Metro Kieran. So Metro Kieran, you now have 2 minutes to speak on this motion.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Metro Kieran, the Community Support Officer, if you weren't aware. I would like to announce in future if you should ask slightly smaller questions because the waterfall is getting a little bit out of hand, to be honest. So just keep them brief, please, because I've went through about 5 bottles already. Anyway, Newcastle University has suffered massively in sliding down the scales of university rankings in the previous years. And I think one of the only ways to arrest this worrying slide of this fantastic Russell Group University, Red Brick Russell University, is to improve the stature with an official song. And I have simply made my own personal opinion of what that would be. And that is, of course, Vengaboys, Boom, 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 Boom. It is a fantastic song. That's something that everyone at Newcastle University can get behind and sing loudly and proudly at all student union events. And I think this would bring us all together and help make us look like a more prestigious university without actually having to do anything difficult. And that, for me, is a win-win. I'll, of course, happily debate with anybody. Not that we need this song. I think it is undeniable that we need this song. Which song, I am happy to debate. And I will take many suggestions from anybody, any of you fine people that can offer a better song, but I am vehemently supportive of this fantastic song. And I think if we did actually pass this motion, I am sure the Vengaboys would be straight up, I suppose, on the nearest megabus to perform at venue. And if that isn't a good motivator, I don't know what is. Thank you very much.
That's your 2 minutes.
I am.
Well, that's your 2 minutes, Metro Kieran. So we have already had one amendment which has been agreed to for this motion, and that can be seen, I was just told to make this clear, and that can be seen in the last line of the first section of Student Union Council resolves, in which it says at the discretion of the event organizer to judge if appropriate. So that is one amendment to this motion. Obviously, Metro Kieran has just asked for any amendments to the song choice. So if anyone would like to supply any amendments to this motion, please feel free to put those in the chat now. However, obviously, in the meantime, we will move on to the questions. So if anyone has any questions for Metro Kieran, which could include an amendment, if you wished, please raise your hand now. No hands raised so far. I'll give 10 more seconds. Okay, we have no questions, so move on to the debate. I will again put one motion for, sorry, one speaker for, one speaker against. So if anyone would like to speak for the motion, please raise your hand now. Oh, we've had one raised hand, and that's from Metro Kieran. Metro Kieran, you have 2 minutes to speak for your own motion once you begin speaking.
Hear me out, like. I've just been thinking, is Boom, 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 Boom the best Vengaboys song? But I don't think it is, actually. Is it not We Like the Party? Can I submit an amendment to change the song to We Like the Party, please?
Yes, Metro Kieran, you are allowed to submit an amendment. That would have to be submitted to George, I believe, or to Angela. Or to Nat in IT.
Oh, I like Nat. I'll send it to Nat. I'm a big fan. Hello, Nat. Thanks for coming along today. Metro Kieran really appreciates it.
Okay, so can you just clarify that amendment again, please, Kieran? Just so we're aware of what it was.
I'd like to change the song from Vendor Boys, Boom 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 Boom, to Vendor Boys, We Light the Party.
Okay. If the council's team would be willing to make that amendment, that would be. Yep. Yeah. So. Yep. So if the council team would like to amend that on screen, just so we have a updated screen, please. And we'll while we're waiting for them to do that, we will take another for and against, given that that's how it appears to be. So would anyone else like to speak for this motion? Metro Kieran, unfortunately, you have already spoken for this motion, so I would like to give it to someone else first. I would like to give other people the opportunity to speak for the motion first. Well, he hasn't put his hand back up, so I would now like to open it up for anyone to speak against this motion. Would anyone like to raise their hand to speak against this motion? Okay, we've had one raised hand from Bente. Bente, you have 2 minutes from when you unmute.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to say I get the fun, I get the humour, I get it, Kieran, I get why you're here. But I also would like to very much notice that as the sabbatical officers work many hours, sometimes 50 to 60 hours a week with serious issues, and we just had the Vice Chancellor here for half an hour to discuss very important issues. It is very difficult to then go to the university the next day having to lobby, as in the second bit, that this song should be used for graduation issues as well. It's quite difficult being a sabbatical officer, getting a lot of backlash about telling us that we're not doing work and not getting any questions on council, and then having to deal with motions like these. You don't have to agree with everything we do, but it's kind of difficult if you want us to be good in how we deal with the university and be taken serious by the university. If this is the things we have to go to the university for, where on the next moment we have to deal with very serious issues. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I can now see that the motion has been changed to be the updated song. So if anyone, considering that we have had 2 for and 2 against now, I will move forward to the voting. So can someone please open the poll? Thank you very much. The poll is now open. Okay, if we can now close the poll. And that motion has not passed. Okay, that is the end of the motion sections. So we now move on to the final leg of council. We still have 1 place available on the Disciplinary Committee. If Harris, who is the chair of the Disciplinary Committee, would like to say a few words on why it's good to join the Disciplinary Committee, and if you would like to join the Disciplinary Committee or put yourself forward, please send a message to Nat in IT or George. Harris?
Hello, yes. Disciplinary Committee is the committee that deals with any complaints against students and groups of students that aren't part of any kind of official group, such as like students in general. So yeah, and also it's important that students are the people who consider those cases and make decisions based on them. So that's primarily what the point of disciplinary is. So if you want to be involved. be involved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Harris. I will give 1 minute for people to submit their application to this role. $35 seconds. $20 seconds. $10 seconds. And that is that. I believe we've had no applications, unfortunately, this council. However, there's always next council. Maybe we'll get them next time, you know. Okay, moving on. We are now moving on to, let me get my sheet up. Student notices. Okie dokie. So just to kick off, people that don't know, student notices is an opportunity for anyone to announce any student notices that they have. Obviously, on behalf of the Student Council, we would like to remind everyone that elections are coming up from the 1st to the 4th of March. You can find the elections at www.nusu.co.uk/vote. And obviously we have a whole range and list of candidates this election season. So please do get involved, and please do vote. Apart from that, if there are any other student notices, please raise your hand now. Okay, we've had one raised hand from Ben. Ben, feel free to go ahead.
Hi everyone. Just as Dorothy said in the State of Union report, we're currently running the Pride Inside campaign. We have 2 events still coming up, the pub quiz and the student Pride lockdown event, which is going to be online, and there's a Facebook page set up for it. So, getting involved with that. And then also as part of the campaign, we're running a LGBT plus Attainment Gap Survey, which you can find on the campaign for Pride Inside. And it's if you enter, you'll be entered in to win, I think, like some type of gift card. Is yet to be decided, and it'll be really good because we're taking this to the university to see if they can do anything to better support LGBT plus students. So if you can fill it in, then please do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. We have another raised hand from the editor of the Union, Ella. Go ahead. Oh.
Hi, yeah, it's the editor of the Courier, but thank you, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that student, don't worry, student media have got the elections. Student media have got the debates for the student elections coming up next week, so they're running every evening apart from Thursday next week, and you can find the events for those on all of the NSR, Courier and NUTV Facebook pages under the events tab, and they'll be live streamed to Facebook and the NUTV YouTube channel. So please come along and ask your questions to the candidates to get to know their manifestos a bit better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more notices to council? Okay, so just one message there from George. If you would like to submit a motion for the next meeting of Student Council, which will take place on the 18th of March, please submit by 10 AM on the 5th of March here. And that is at www.nusu.co.uk/yourvoice/council/motion/propose/. Otherwise, I'm seeing no other notices. So we're now going to move on to our open debate. So this open debate is quite a unique one. Obviously, we've had the Vice-Chancellor come in and he's given a talk to us and answered some questions. And Student Council is obviously quite curious as to whether you found that helpful. So our open debate this month is: the Vice-Chancellor holds frequent town hall meetings for staff to ask questions, similar to the one at the beginning of council. Would you find having these frequently helpful? Now, obviously, just as a word of admin, obviously these debates don't bind anything. They aren't, binding to the Constitution of the Union. There's no vote at the end, but it's just a chance for you to make your opinions known and to have a chance to have a say on it. So if there are any points for this open debate, please raise your hand now. We've had one raised hand from Alex Walker. Alex, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it would be a really, really useful thing. We need more transparency in the connection between NUSU, the students and the university. And I think having the Vice-Chancellor directly answering questions being put to him by students who are not just attending council, but across the student body would be a really, really useful way to help fix some of the divides that have clearly opened up between all of us. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you very much, Alex. We've had another hand raised by Sunil Roger. Sunil, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I also support this motion, this suggestion in the open debate. I think it was very useful to hear the Vice-Chancellor's point of view, and particularly the fact that he was prepared to spend a little bit longer than was actually scheduled. Taking some of those questions, I think, is a very good sign. In my experience, some of the things that were raised in relation to, for example, postgraduate researchers, I very much welcomed the fact that he welcomed people to contact him and to raise things through Charlotte in the case of those particular issues, because it seemed like it might also allow some unblocking of things that perhaps have been raised before via other channels and perhaps are not getting through. So I would very much support the idea of regular town hall meetings, because as the previous speaker said, it would open up the channel of communication a little bit more and allow the loop to be closed on some of these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more hands to be raised? Anyone have any more points on this? Ooh, we have one from the president. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just more of like an add-on in case anyone wants to contribute to this. I guess something we're definitely thinking of, how do we kind of have more of these, and what format do they take? So I guess the question that I have for council is, would they prefer them to be at the beginning of council like today and kind of just attend one thing, or would you find having like a separate town hall maybe a little bit longer than the one we were able to have today? Just kind of which format, if anyone has a reply to that.
Thank you very much. We have another hand raised from the Chair of Scrutiny, Harris. Go ahead.
Hi. Just on that, I think it definitely should be separate from council. I think there's clearly an appetite to go at least 60 minutes, but I think having that in front of council would make council as a whole quite bulky. We've somehow managed to stay on time today, despite my prediction otherwise, so actually maybe not, but I think keeping it a separate event would probably be beneficial. Kind of advertising it as such and having that kind of direct line for students. And it also lets us kind of design a particular system around it so it can actually feel more direct between the students and the Vice-Chancellor without making it absolute chaos and a pandemonium. But yeah.
Thank you very much. We have another hand raised from Charlotte Bolton. Charlotte, if you want to go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to note that we've got a plan in the works for a rep forum with Chris Day and some other members of the executive board. So that's open to course reps, school reps, and different reps within the schools. So if you're already kind of involved with student democracy and the representation system, we thought it would be nice to give you an opportunity to have a bit of a longer form question and answer session with him through that. So if any of you are involved with the course rep situation or anything like that, there will be kind of sign up links for that soon, or they'll be on the Teams. And if there is kind of student appetite for the longer form separate events, I think we've seen here, and I think by the attendance even just at council today, I think that's something we're looking to do to be for all students. But just to let you know, if you are already kind of involved with the rep system, that there is a event coming up where you'll be able to get involved as well. But hopefully we can do them a little bit wider and, you know, get more people able to ask the questions in a longer amount of time, because we know the time today wasn't necessarily enough to answer all the questions here. But I do think it is a very promising commitment from Chris that he would answer them all in some form. So hopefully going forward we can do more, and it's really useful to have questions in, and thank you for kind of engaging with us and letting us know that these things work. Sometimes we put things on and aren't quite sure whether it's what if the format works. So thanks for getting involved in the debate.
Okay, does anyone else have any more points for this topic? It appears as though so far it's been very positive. Oh, we've got one from Miles. Go on, Miles.
I understand that due to the current system, if they were to be a separate thing, they would be held like this on Zoom. But if the COVID restrictions were to be changed, would the separate question answer thing with the Vice Chancellor, would they be still over Zoom, or would they be an in-person sort of thing?
I think that's a question for one of the sabbaticals, if anyone wants to take that.
Yeah, so I think it'll be to do with accessibility and what's kind of the best thing going on. I think we've all learned something from like Zoom isn't being easier, and so I think maybe keeping a blended approach would be quite nice. So, you know, I think it'd definitely be what was like most accessible for students and what was most popular for students, because I think something we've definitely found is that engagement increases when, you know, it's 5 o'clock, people can go home, make their tea at home, and then also have it kind of going on. So it'd be definitely something that we'd consider if people wanted it present in person, buzzword, we'd do that. But also I think, you know, taking something forward from that blended future and maybe having it on Zoom where, you know, as many people can engage with it as possible.
Okay, do we have any more points for this open debate? I will give 10 seconds. Okay, that is the end of the debate, and that, I believe, is the end of council. Yes, that is the end of council. So thank you all very, very much to everyone who came. Thank you very much to all those who are running in the upcoming elections for coming as well. We do always appreciate your extra attendance at this time of year. And we will see you all again next council in March. So thank you very much. You are now free to leave.